This is the place for freedom lovers. But
we're 10 to 15 years from retirement and not ready at all. Frankly, our world is messed up. Supply chains in turmoil, inflation out of control, a totally corrupt money system, and friends and family completely split over pointless political ideologies. It's like we've been severed from everything we've known these past few years. So the hubby and I are on a 2,500-mile road trip around the Northwest U.S. to see if there's a better place to live to ride out the economic storm.
starting in Tahoe, we drove down to Vegas and then up through Utah to Montana. And we saw some really cool places. And if you want to learn more, you can check out our other videos.
The drive from Missoula to Hope, Idaho through Thompson Falls on Highway 200 was absolutely stunning. The mountain, river, and valley views were so dramatic. If you ever have an excuse to take this drive, totally do it. And yes, there was Star Trek.
Every decision that Kirk makes, Khan was one step ahead of him.
Surrender the bridge. Negative.
And then we have a big music sting, and that is the end of Act 3. My note here is literally, this is what I wrote.
We arrived at our friend's house where we'd be staying for the next few days, but we didn't film there because they like their privacy. But they live in this peaceful, forested setting in a tiny little town of 97 people along the eastern shore of Lake Pend
Of course, the first thing I did when I got there was to look up real estate prices. They were definitely up from when we were here last a year and a half ago. The median list price of a home in the area was $1.58 million, and it was a seller's market with only 7 properties for sale at the time I looked. Here's what you get for about $770,000, the cheapest house I could find.
The next day, we spent some time exploring Sandpoint, and oh my gosh, I love this town. It is a real contender for retirement living.
It has this cute little downtown with lots of interesting shops and restaurants, local coffee roasteries, local breweries, and charming historic homes within walking distance of downtown. It's on the edge of a beautiful lake with beaches and walking trails. There's skiing nearby at Schweitzer, which is part of the Icon Pass system that's good at resorts across the West, including Tahoe. The town isn't too big, and there's lots of rural property nearby where you can grow food, keep animals, with winters that are more mild than where we live now.
Sandpoint has a hospital and all the basic shopping you need right there, but if you need more, Coeur D'Alene is about an hour away and Spokane is an hour and a half away, which is also where you'll find the nearest big airport.
We went out for dinner with our friends a couple of times, once to McDuff's Brewery, where I tried a glass of Hairy Nuts, a toasted coconut stout that was amazing, like dessert in a cup. We also had dinner at the Fat Pig on live music night, where we shared a table with some ex-Californians from Santa Barbara who were so glad to be out of there. The music was fantastic and the place was packed with locals.
This part of Idaho definitely has a more conservative, live and let live kind of vibe, which we appreciate.
As with every place we visited on this trip, home prices were a lot higher now than they used to be. The median list price for a home in Sandpoint was $755,000 in a slight seller's market with prices plateauing, and anything under $877,000 selling in 14 to 35 days. And here's what you get for $599,000, the cheapest house in town.
Interestingly, the median list price for a condo was higher at $1.59 million, driven primarily, I think, by this luxury development at Schweitzer. But if you know more, let me know in the comments below.
There was a slight buyer's advantage in the Sandpoint condo market at the time I looked, with anything under $645,000 selling in 21 days or less, and it seemed like sales were starting to pick up the slack.
Hiking around Sandpoint seems pretty good, but honestly, it's not as great as where we live now because I live in the freaking Sierra Nevada, surrounded by pristine wilderness. That's gonna be hard to beat. The mountains around Sandpoint are beautiful though, especially at the south end of the lake. Boy, would I love to live someplace with a view of those.
Okay, Pally, we're going for a ride. You don't want to run a walk. Listen, Pally, this can either be a taxi or a hearse.
We have a daughter studying at a Buddhist monastery near Newport, Washington, just over the border, so we went to visit her one afternoon. Newport has a real working class feel to it, so not as upscale as Sandpoint with a much smaller downtown, but it has everything you need for a nice, peaceful life, including local coffee and beer, something that's become a must-have for me any place I live.
The surrounding area is pretty, especially around the river, and housing housing prices are more affordable too.
The median list price for a home in Newport is $567,950, and it's still a seller's market, though prices have plateaued. Anything under $495,000 sells in 7 days or less, and here's what you get for $369,000, the cheapest property I could find. It had just come on the market, and it looks like a real project. Here's a nice country property on 65 acres for $1.6 million if you need more space.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of hiking in the area unless there's a bunch of secret local trails that haven't been mapped out, so that's a minus. But Washington is a no income tax state, so that's a big plus.
The drive south through Sagal was nice but not spectacular, though I bet there are some interesting properties hidden in the trees, especially near the lakes. I would have loved to have explored further, but we were short on time, which meant we weren't able to get into Coeur D'Alene proper. So this is footage from our last trip in 2020.
I love Coeur D'Alene.
As you know, I adore a good downtown, and Coeur D'Alene's is super cute, bigger than Sandpoint's, with lots of shops and restaurants, including good local coffee and beer. It's also right on the edge of Coeur D'Alene Lake with a beautiful waterfront park, pier, and walking trails.
Though the lake itself isn't as big or spectacular as Lake Pend Oreille, it's still an incredible, pretty little city, and I could totally live there.
Shocker! Home prices in Coeur D'Alene have really gone up the past few years. The median list price for a home there is $841,900, and it's currently in a strong seller's market with anything under $737,000 selling in 14 days or less. Here's what you get for $525,000, the cheapest I could find.
There seems to be a lot of interesting hiking there, and I would love to spend more time in the area exploring the lifestyle.
With Spokane as our destination, Google routed us along the outskirts of Rathdrum and through Post Falls on the way to I-90. And oh my gosh, there was so much building going on. We're talking new homes galore, plopped in the middle of huge tracts of farmland and in such a pretty valley with gorgeous mountain views.
Wow, tons of construction. Commercial, industrial, houses, roads.
These developments looked nice with kind of a craftsman vibe, but they were packed in like sardines. They started off at $479,000 and went up from there. But it will be interesting to see what happens there as the housing market continues to cool.
The drive through Spokane Valley was pretty, and we ended up at P.F. Chang's downtown for lunch.
Where is it?
Right there on the right.
Okay.
P.F. Chang's.
I really like your help.
This is maybe a place. That's a place.
That was Ted's choice. I prefer local places, but he loves his P.F. Chang's.
Spokane's downtown core was a lively, happening place, clearly a center of regional commerce with lots of good restaurants along with some entertainment venues too. We checked out the Riverfront Mall, which seemed small but well stocked with the usual suspects.
Pottery Barn. And a giant shoe.
Then we walked over to the river park, and oh my goodness, what a beautiful place. The waterfalls and river rapids were stunning with bridges, walkways, and art installations, a farmer's market, museums, kids' play areas, and other attractions as well.
Clearly they've put a lot of money into this park, which seemed like a wonderful place to spend the day.
The median list price for a home in Spokane is $499,900, and it is a crazy strong seller's market there. Anything under $884,900 currently sells in 14 days or less. Here's what you get for $450,000, the cheapest house I could find. And here's something a little more luxe at $1.25 million. But my God, look at that backyard. Looks like an erosion nightmare.
Spokane seems to have a good amount of hiking in the area, but you might have to drive to the trailheads depending on where you live. But that riverfront area connects with a lot of trails and seems like a real gem.
After lunch, we had to move on because we had a lot of miles to cover that day. But I definitely want to come back to this area and explore some more.
So, are we moving to Idaho? I really like the Sandpoint area, but Ted thinks it's too far from the city. Yeah, sure, it's a real trek to get to the airport, but I can deal with that. We do have some awesome friends there, which is a huge plus, but I don't think Ted would seriously consider it unless our daughter ends up settling there for good. Then he might change his mind. The only big drawback for me is that I'd miss hiking in my beloved Sierra Nevadas, so I don't know. We'll have to think about it.
Next time, we'll be exploring some of the lesser known areas of Central Washington, Oregon, and California, including Walla Walla, Mount Vernon, Burns, and Alturas, before heading back home to Tahoe. I'm Diane, and with my hubby Ted, we're looking for the best place to live in America given the economic insanity around us. Can you relate? Then say hello in the comments, like, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss a thing.
What's that for? See, your sexy husband loves you.
That's right.
Is that what this is about?
Yeah. Sexy husband following me like a fly.
I'm not a fly. Well, that means you're shit.